Welcome, everybody, to another episode of You Fascinate Me with Jamie Engel. I am your host, Jamie. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Episode 1 went on without a hitch last week with our guest, Andrew Jenks. But this week, another episode, another interview. Before we get to that, though, follow us on Instagram at You Fascinate Me Pod. You can follow us on Facebook, You Fascinate Me with Jamie Engel. Also, email us, youfascinatemepod@gmail.com. This week, a little bit different type of interview. Last week, we had Andrew Jenks, documentary filmmaker. This week, we're going to interview a friend of mine. His name is Jake Wright. Jake has openly struggled with bipolar disorder. So we got a mental health conversation here today. We learn all about what it's really like to go through that type of thing. How you cope with it, things you can do, how he's managed to really overcome a lot of odds, and just a really, really great conversation. I appreciate him coming on, and I can't wait to share this interview with you. So, without further ado, let's get right into this week's interview with Jake Wright.
It is now time for this week's You Fascinate Me interview. Take it away, Dad.
All right, welcoming in my guest at this time, Jake Wright. Jake, thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm really excited. Been looking forward to it all week.
We've been talking about it quite a bit lately, and I told you about the concept of the new podcast. I think, one of the big things I wanted to do on this was, talk to people that kind of fascinate me. And I know you've got an interesting story, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting is probably one way to put it for sure. So yeah, I've been totally down to talk about anything, and
right.
I'm like an open book on everything. So
cool. Let's get right down to it. So, you and I met working at a retail store. We don't necessarily need to go into where.
Yeah. Back in the wonder years.
Back in the day, you and I were sales reps together. I'd like to think we kind of clicked and became friends, kind of pretty right off the bat.
Yeah, it was like a weird time for me because I was coming from Buffalo and just had been freshly divorced and was kind of like reorienting myself. And I think we became. I think you were one of the people that I gravitated to. So
all my negativity while I was working there was your bag at the time.
Yeah, I think we were both at that point where it was like, okay, what's the next, what's the next thing, Things were a little challenging there at the time.
Yeah, you were you mentioned something about moving from Buffalo to Rochester at the time. I know you were kind of going through some stuff through a divorce. Kind of, I don't know how far back you want to go or what you want to talk about, but obviously, one of the things that fascinate me is just kind of talking to you through your story. You were diagnosed with bipolar disorder, correct?
Yeah, I was diagnosed. Oh, geez, that was probably 2015, I think, is when I was officially diagnosed. But
was that right around the same time?
That was basically exactly at the same time. It's that was probably when I was at that store was probably one of the most rough patches I've ever had.
Yeah. Well, go back a little bit further. So, how did all that kind of come about? As far as, where did you, obviously it had to have been some sort of self-realization or something, right? That kind of triggered, I guess, to say something's not quite right.
I think I knew something wasn't quite right looking back when I was 8 or 9 years old. I could probably say that I didn't feel right. But at that point in time, the lows got a lot worse, and then I was starting to experience for the first time the high end of the disorder. So the disorder is typically characterized by periods of low periods and then also highs, which is also known as a manic episode or mania. And when I was at that store working with you guys, was kind of the great unravel. I had been kind of like a loosely glued structure for probably a good 12 years since that 9-10-year-old range. I was just kind of like a frail structure that was glued together.
Yeah.
And that's really that's when things came unhinged, because I don't know how much, I can't really remember that period of my life super well, but I probably just wasn't there one day, I imagine.
Yeah.
So we were working together, and I probably just vanished. But that was like where probably I hit like rock bottom, like depression wise. So I like just could not, I couldn't focus. I went to this, basically I admitted to a friend that, like I was like, dude, I can't like do this anymore. Like I can't go like another day. And they helped me find this doctor, and who's still actually my doctor, which is the cool thing. So we've been going strong 5 or 6 years now. And basically I told him what was going on, and I told him the job was adding a lot of stress. And he's like, get me like a packet on your company's like disability plan. And I went in the next day, and he's like, you're out of work for like the next 6 months. And,
wow.
That was like a really big, like, whoa, what do you mean? Like, because I had been working pretty much full-time hours since I was like 17. So I was grinding it out for 8 years at that point, really not taking any sort of time off.
Is there a specific event that you can kind of point to that kind of went, that's it, that's what kind of set it over? It kind of took you, you said you were kind of loosely glued together, right? Was there something that said, this is the thing?
I think that there was an event, and you can probably remember this. So when you are manic, when you're bipolar, you can feel intense bouts of paranoia. And I think being in a sales job, and at that time they were very performance driven that point in time.
Yep.
I was having what's called a mixed episode, where you can have like that paranoia and then also be very depressed. So you get the high and the low at the same time.
Yep.
And I don't know if you remember that Sunday morning where we had that meeting where our manager was almost in tears because he was afraid of, if we didn't turn things around. The basic vibe was we're all going to have our heads chopped off, basically.
Yep.
And I was already like, you got to think that you're in this like intense performance-driven environment. And when I got to the store the first time, they're like, we really need someone that's going to like drive numbers. And for someone that experiences, all these issues, and I was like going through the divorce and stuff, when that meeting happened, the fear of losing my job, that was like the last thing that I had. I like lost my marriage. All my friends had moved on from here when I had moved. Like, people move on real fast when you leave a city.
Sure.
And I'll be like frank, because I don't want to romanticize anything. Like, after that, I went to work 3 times with a suicide note in my pocket.
Wow. That's... I can't even imagine or explain like what. I guess the question is you see a lot of people say on TV or things like that, or suicide is almost like a selfish act. But where does your head at when it's in that, when you're that deep down? Like, what are your thoughts? Like, is it I just don't want to do this anymore, or everybody better off without me type thing, or what?
Well, there's different stages, I think, of suicidal ideation. I think you have if I don't wake up tomorrow, like, I'll be okay with it. That's
Sure.
like kind of like a passive thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you have your active thinking of like, okay, I'm gonna actually like do this, or thinking about doing it like more actively. I do think now, looking back, that suicide is a very angry thing to do, because basically you take all of the pain and suffering that you're feeling and you unleash it on everyone else, unfortunately. And the other thing is that I think the statistic is that, and this is something that a guy told me during that time period, he's like, did you know that, like, if you witness someone close to you commit suicide, or know of someone close to you that commits suicide, you're 10 times more likely to do it yourself. But I think, it's complicated. It's very complicated because I think, what's their name? Sinead O'Connor. I think they have I don't know who they are, but I was looking at these memes one day, and I think they're like a celebrity, and they said the number one symptom or whatever, the meme, basically, it wasn't really a meme, but it said like the number one thing is the constant voice in your head telling you to like kill yourself. So like I've been doing really well for like 2 years now, but I had like a blip this week, for example, where I just had I get these feelings still where it's like, I'm not going to be here very long, like I still get that sometimes. So I think the thing that people don't understand is typically, I feel like for me personally and the people that I know with bipolar disorder is it's like valleys and it's like deep ruts and high mountain peaks. And when you're in the low, it's not like a gradual depression. It's normally straight to like a black hole. Like there's no, it's funny because like earlier this week on Tuesday, I had a meeting with my supervisor talking about, like FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, because I had it through where I could miss a day here and there. And,
sure.
It gives me like extra sick time basically. And I was trying to not use it anymore. And to tie this all together, on Tuesday, I was like, I don't think I'm going to need it for a long time. And then the next day, I'm like at work, and all I can feel is like this intense paranoia come on. And then the next thing you know, like I just feel this intense sadness later that evening. And then when I was in that moment, I was like, I'm never going to feel good again.
Oh.
Within a matter of 2 days, I went from feeling like I'll never need FMLA again to applying for it yesterday.
Oh. So explain to me a little bit more if you can, or describe it. I don't know that it's really a 100% possible to describe, but you hear a lot about the manic state, right? Like you said, the highs, the lows, the lows.
Yeah.
Explain to me like how that, like where's your mental state at that point? Is there a point where you just kind of mentally just black out and you don't remember any of it? Or, because I've heard of that too. I mean, there's a famous story, was it Scott Stapp I'm
not familiar, but
there was a famous somebody who went in like a manic state and like doesn't remember any of it.
Yeah, I mean the difference is typically depression is kind of like a chemical imbalance, whereas like a manic episode, your brain's just flat out misfiring.
Right.
I think the thing is that typically when you're manic, you do things that are out of character. For a lot of people, it might be uncontrollable urges to have sex with random people. Not something that I really struggle with, luckily. Substance abuse. Back when I was so I think mania is often misunderstood, and I think currently there's a lot of stigma associated with mania because one, it's the more or less most people have been depressed at some point in their life. If you've been manic, you have bipolar disorder. So if only 4% of the population has bipolar disorder, and only a select few of those people have type 1 bipolar disorder, which gets the worst mania, I mean, you're talking a very slim percentage of the population that's ever experienced that or even knows that they've experienced that. But like the latest thing I saw is there's like this TikTok challenge where people will say, I was really manic this morning. It'll show their room really dirty, and then like they claim to have been manic and like clean their room.
Yeah.
And that's like so far from like, for me, it's typically like last summer I was working really, really hard, pushing myself really, really hard. Things got busy, and I started hallucinating, and then that turned into like I was in my kitchen and I was cooking something, and my friends had to come over, try and get your mind off things, and I turned off the stove, checked it like 10 times. I got to my friend's house, and I started telling myself, you didn't turn off the stove. The stove's going to catch on fire.
Yep.
It's going to burn the house down. Your dog's going to die.
Whew.
Your roommate's not going to have a house anymore, and you're going to be homeless.
So it's like extremes then.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and,
you talked a lot about the lows, and that's what we're talking about. Where do you experience a lot of the highs, and what's that kind of like?
Well, here's the thing is that I think the disorder came on a lot stronger at 25 for me, which is when it's average for males. That's the average age for diagnosis for males. I don't struggle with the highs as bad as some people do, which is good. I will definitely can go like 6 or 7 days with minimal to no sleep and suffer from pretty bad paranoia. Sometimes I'll start to believe things that aren't really true.
Sure.
I have friends that'll think that they're like Jesus Christ, or like I was in the psych ward one time and my roommate thought that he was Stewie from Family Guy.
Oh my God.
When we woke up in the morning, he would call me Brian.
Oh boy.
So
wow.
I'm lucky in that respect, but I still get it to a point where it's debilitating.
Sure. I'm trying to think. I've got so many questions right now. I'm trying to focus on
Just,
where to kind of go with
yeah,
it.
it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's I think it's a lot because it's not something that everybody can understand, and I think that as somebody who suffers through, there's such a stigma around mental illness in general, and even I suffer from it. Nowhere near. Obviously, I'm not trying to demean anything you're going through. I've had bouts of depression, bouts of I take medication for anxiety, things like that. And I feel like there's just people that don't go through that don't necessarily understand. And is there like misconceptions about, people with bipolar disorder that you'd love to kind of set straight?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, here's the thing is that there's romanticized mental illness in the country, and then there's real, like, clinical mental illness. The other day I was, what's funny is I was doing really good. I've been solid for, it's funny, like, I had been on, like, a straight, like, couple months of feeling, like, really solid. And I woke up, I think it was Wednesday. I felt kind of like, I told you, like, I was, Tuesday afternoon, I was, like, really kind of, like, paranoid. And then, like, my mood just kind of, like, went a little south.
Yeah.
I just felt kind of, like, that's what I'll notice. I'll be, like, on the rocks, so to speak. And it's like, okay, is it going to go up or is it going to go down?
Is there something that you can cope with right then and there, or is there something that, like a mechanism that you use to kind of bring yourself kind of back? Is it center? Is that the right word to put?
I mean, stay in the moment, stay present. Mindfulness. There's a lot of things that you can do, but at that moment, I wasn't sure: am I going up or am I going down? Because there's strategies for both. So at that moment, I was like, I don't know which way it's going. So anyway, I woke up Wednesday and I was feeling kind of sad. And I was, like, not unbearably sad, but I was pretty sad. And we had this town hall meeting, and it's virtual, and there's a chat box. And this is, like, funny that you asked this question because this was literally, like, 3 days ago. And the people started talking about the weather. And as you know, it was, like, 86 last Sunday. And then it was, like, I think we woke up to snow.
Yeah, it was snowing middle of the week. Great Rochester weather here.
So people were cracking jokes about the weather, and there's 1,000 people in this chat room. There's 1,000 people, all white collar,
yeah.
$40,000 to $100,000 a year jobs in here, and two people, the first person goes, wow, the weather's really been bipolar lately. And then it got, like, several laugh reactions on it. And then someone else put bipolar weather with a smiley face. And it really, that cut deep. The timing was really bad,
Yeah.
So that is frustrating for multiple reasons because, one, you would never use cancer or Alzheimer's or diabetes as an adjective to describe something that you find funny.
Yeah, no, not typically, no.
You would probably get looked at kind of funny if you did that. And then the other dual part of it is, like, typically when you're talking about the weather, it's, you're one way this moment and then this way the next moment. Bipolar disorder is generally characterized through long, drawn-out periods. I mean, there's rapid cycling bipolar disorder, but for the most part, people can be depressed for 6 to 9 months, manic for a week to 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes longer. That's not like one moment to the next moment. You know what I mean?
I was going to ask you about misconceptions and things like that too. And yeah, I know you mentioned a bunch, but that's one, right? Everybody thinks that if you're bipolar, it's like, well, you're happy one minute, you're sad the next, and you never know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I wanted to say is, like, happy and sad are very shallow words. Like, when I tell you sad and I mention wanting to kill yourself, that's not just sad.
That's much deeper.
That's a much deeper, dark hole.
Right,
and when you talk about paranoia and delusions and believing things that aren't real, that's not really what I would use to describe happy.
Right.
You can go through both of those things and never feel an ounce of happiness.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. We talked a lot about the downs, right?
Yeah.
At this point. So let me kind of flip this a little bit. You've talked about doing, you've been doing a lot better in the last couple of years. I can attest to that just, from being friends and seeing you on social media and things like that. You seem a lot happier. Let's talk about the treatment aspect of it, where you've gotten to. So it seems like a couple things. One, I have to assume there's some sort of education that happens There's got to be some sort of medication that kind of goes along with that, maybe some therapy. One thing I noticed with you especially, and I was going to ask you this question, I found it very interesting, is you're big into creativity and photography and videography and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your kind of go-to to kind of focus that energy or focus yourself that way? Is that a something you use to kind of get better? Or
Yeah.
not? I guess that's probably not the right word.
No, I understand what you're trying to say. It's like
Good. I'm glad you do.
It's like a
'cause I'm
channel
kind of
or like a
this.
way to harness
Yeah,
something. I
thank
think is
you.
what you're
Yeah.
saying. So
Exactly.
I think the one thing that you might know is like there's been Van Gogh, Edgar Allan Poe. There's been they believe that Kurt Cobain was bipolar. Like there's so many. Typically, people who have bipolar disorder are very creative.
Sure.
You mentioned about like education. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. Some of it was I was getting sick of going to the hospital. It's not fun, and it costs a lot of money.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Like,
yeah.
Can you tell me about those things?
So like. I mean, locally in Rochester, here's the first crazy thing. If you go to the hospital, let's say you're feeling really down or manic, and you go there, they're gonna basically you go to the regular emergency room at Strong, and then they're gonna tell you to go to this place, and they basically make you sit with all the angry drunks for 1 to 2 hours.
Oh God.
And most of these people are like chained to a hospital bed. That's where they put you when you're going through a rough time. And then from there, I know they're remodeling it, so I don't know exactly what it's like now because it's been 2 years since I've been there. But you would go up into this U-shaped hallway, and from there they had a legal right to keep you in a hallway with no bed for 3 days.
Really? What is the rationale behind that?
I don't know.
Just lack of bed space, maybe? Or?
Lack of bed space is definitely... I mean, there was one time where I went there because I wasn't feeling well, and they're like, there's no beds in Rochester, there's no beds in Syracuse, and there's no beds in Buffalo, so do you think that you're okay enough to go home?
Oh, that's... Man, I can't imagine. Like, it's so prevalent in society where they talk so much about cancer and things like that, and illnesses where there's specific, structures or specific, places to take care of this stuff. But it sounds almost like you're kind of, you kind of go into like a general population type, treatment, and then they're like, well, we might have room for you here. That's scary to me.
I mean,
man.
the number one thing that sums it up is what's funny is there's 2 different psych wards at Strong. There's an extended observation bed where you go for 3 days, and it's much smaller and more quiet. You have to kind of be privileged to go there in the terms of they have to know you, so you've already been there, and you have to be quiet and low-key. That's for, like, people they know that are just having a hard time, and they're going to be well-behaved.
Sure.
But what's funny is they have to wheel you in a wheelchair with security all the way, it's all the way across the hospital.
Oh, my God.
And one day this nurse was wheeling me along, and I'm like, wow, like this part of the hospital is like really nice, because when you're in the psych ward area, it's like it looks like it's 80 years outdated. And the nurse goes, yeah, you can just tell what parts of the hospital make money and which ones don't. And that just that literally hit the nail on the head with mental illness. Like that's what the problem is like it costs money. There's no money to be made. It just, most of the people that go in there on a routine, there's some people that are in there on a monthly basis. Like they're there with Medicaid and, or they don't have insurance. So it's not lucrative, so therefore it's outdated.
That's such a statement on society in general. It's so money driven at that point where it's like I say mental illness has such an interesting or weird stigma to it. I think on my other podcast, Mr. Mark Radio, we had documentary filmmaker Andrew Jenks. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I have not. I'm not super familiar.
He has suffered a lot through deep depression and anxiety in his entire life, and one of the things he talked about was going to see a therapist, and that was kind of something to help. He goes, you go to the gym to work out your body. Why is there such a negative stigma to go to a therapist? So essentially it's working out your brain. Like, that was it was an interesting way to put that, but there's, to your point, the stuff like, probably, again, the cancer, the stuff like that, where it's, the quote unquote money make, in the hospital there, but mental illness is kind of just thrown in a corner almost.
I don't get as much stigma about therapy as I do about medications. There's a lot of, what's funny is there's a lot more stigma associated around the medications and the doctors than the therapists, I would say.
Which is interesting because, most mental illnesses are a chemical imbalance in the brain, right? And you use medicine to fix all sorts of things. Like, why is that such a negative thing to try to balance out those chemicals? Again, I take anti-anxiety medication every day. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't, my wife can tell when I don't. She's like, you didn't take your medicine today, did you? It's because I get angry, or I snap at the kids a little bit more. You know what I mean? It's like she can tell, and why, I don't understand. I guess why is that the case?
I think a lot of people think that these doctors have a goal to keep you entrenched in a system, when in reality they would love to see you out of the system.
Sure.
And the other thing is that it's weird is because in our society, making money is generally a good thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is that people are under this idea that they're just out to make money, these big drug manufacturers that make these drugs, where I can tell you that there's one drug that I take that has really worked for me over the years, which helps me basically not have to go on Social Security disability and helps me be a functioning member of society. So I don't understand why that's so awful.
When you talked about getting, checked into the psych ward, I don't know how long or how many times you've done it. Does it help, or do you get help within that, or does it feel more like a prison where they're basically just trying to keep you from hurting yourself or anybody else?
It's like weird. If you're not in the right headspace, it'll make you go mad. But if you go in there and just let yourself have like a reset, because you're not allowed to have a phone, you don't go outside, you can't control when you eat. If you the last time I went in with the right mindset, like, okay, I'm gonna reset myself. And I haven't been back since. There's been times where I went in there and I was angry and, because I didn't always go willingly. That's the other thing is it wasn't always my choice. But that time, it was my choice. And I was like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to have a little reset. And it really worked. So I think that there's people that it really helps because they're in the right headspace. And I think that there's the people where they think it's stupid or they just want to get out. But with that said, the last time I went in, it was 7 days, and basically that's 7 days of pacing up and down a hallway, staring out a window.
God.
It's just funny because most people are like, dude, it's only 7 days, but it's been interesting for me watching COVID because when people get quarantined with their comfort of their own home, their cell phone, Netflix, most people can't do it.
Oh, I was going to say the same thing. I had COVID back in January, and I isolated myself in my guest room / office for 5 days, and I'm like, I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. But I had, like you said, I had my computer, I had my Netflix, I had my phone, I had everything. I can't imagine just. What goes on in there though? Are you getting help throughout the day, or is it just
no?
You just need to be.
It's weird.
Put away almost.
It's I've seen a lot of funny things. I've seen some really bad things, some disheartening things. There's generally groups, and sometimes the groups if you go in with the right mind space, I've been to some part of some group convert, like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But with 10 people, and you get some real honest, down-to-earth, heartfelt conversations, and you can learn a lot from that. But normally the doctor comes in for 3 minutes. Any thoughts of hurting yourself? How's this medicine working? Because normally they try and adjust your meds.
Sure. Okay.
Just to show that they're basically doing something.
All right.
Which can be annoying because if you don't want your meds touched, they might just touch them just so that they can say they did something.
They did. Okay.
Billing, probably.
Sure.
And then, other than that, there's probably, I think there was 2 groups a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And if you want to get out, you got to go to group each day, be a nice member of the psych ward, and take your medicine. And don't lose your mind and ask to be let out early, which one of my roommates failed to do one time.
Ugh, so is it kind of like it's almost like with a kid. It's like, keep asking me for the candy, you're not getting it. That was
one of the more funny stories,
but
actually, that I have. Because it wasn't all bad. There was some funny stuff that, dude, it's like, nothing better.
Come on, give us something. Give me a funny story.
It was just okay. So it's kind of dark. It's kind of dark humor, but it's kind of funny.
That's fine.
So I'm in there, and they're like, Jake, you're gonna get a roommate. And granted, my first roommate thought he was Stewie from Family Guy, which I'm not making fun of, but because on like day 4, he woke up and he's like, hey, Jake, how are you doing? I'm like, you're back.
Oh, you're back.
You're back. You know what I mean?
Please tell me you played into it a little bit.
So, we got along well, so they figured I'd be a good candidate for a roommate. But this is another thing that's going to show you how messed up it is in a way. So this guy comes in. He's like probably 6'8", probably like 285 pounds.
Big boy.
Big guy. And like there's like that awkward silence because you're like now roommates.
Sure.
So like, do you talk to each other? Do you not talk to each other? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think I had been there like 4 days. So I was like halfway through my stay. So like he sits down and he's like, what are you here for? And I'm like,
it really is like prison conversation.
Yeah.
What are you in for?
Yeah.
I didn't do shit.
I didn't do nothing.
Ugh.
So, I mean, yeah. So I told him, I'm just having a rough time. And I'm like, do I want to know what you're in here for? Because sometimes, like, it's not always good.
Sure.
So I asked him. He's like, well, I sometimes have thoughts of hurting other people.
Okay.
So I was like,
you're like, oh, great.
I literally told him, if you feel like eating me for breakfast, don't tell me first. That's what I told him. And he thought it was really funny. So I took a chance. I was like,
that is taking a chance. That could be like, what are you calling me? Or
like, I'm like,
all right,
okay, you know what I mean? It is what it is. Like,
oh my God.
If you want to eat me for breakfast, don't tell me first. And he laughed.
That's scary.
But it was just funny because immediately he goes, look out the window. That's my Nana's house over there. I was like, oh, okay. He's a big softie.
There you go.
What's amusing, though, is that, well, not amusing, but bad, is that he did end up getting into a physical altercation with someone while he was there, which was kind of like...
Good news, though, it wasn't you.
Good news is that it was not me.
Set the scene a little bit for me. So when you see on TV and all this other nonsense, people going into a psych ward, it's just you're in a room with padded walls and basically a mattress to lay on. I'm guessing that's not really the case.
No. But I got to finish that story.
All right, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
So,
my apologies.
like, 4 days goes by, and he's like, Jake, how do you get out of here? And I'm like, you go to group, you do what they say, and you do not, like, lastly, you do not beg to get let out. And I told him, hey, man, I'm just letting you know the doc, he'd kind of come to like me.
Yeah.
And he was, like, relying on me to get through this hard time, you know what I mean?
Yep.
He'd come to me for advice and this and that. We were, like, friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm probably leaving. Just whatever you do, don't freak out. So the doctors pull me into the hallway, and they're like, Jake, it looks like this dude runs out, like, eyes bugging.
Oh, no.
Just hands out to the side, and he's like, let me out of here! Let me out of here!
Oh, no.
And he's packing up his stuff into a neat little pile near the exit door, and he just folds his arms, and he's like, I'm leaving.
They're like, no, like, no, you're not.
It reminded me, it kind of you ever have, like, your kids say that they're going to, like, run away, and they, like, they get,
not
like,
yet,
they get, like, a little lunch pail, and,
yeah.
they throw, like, a couple things in there. And like
I've heard of other
like
friends, kids doing that, but yeah.
You see it on YouTube or whatever,
yeah.
but that's kind of what it was like. He was there, he had, like, 2 pairs of pants, like a T-shirt, and, like, his snacks that he had stashed, and he was gonna leave.
That's amazing.
So, but it was kind of funny because I, like, literally 5 minutes earlier, I was like, you asked about, like, what's it like in a psych ward?
What's the room? What's it like in there, I guess?
I've been in... So one psych ward, I was sleeping on a rectangular metal box with a 30-year-old 2-inch mattress pad on it.
Oh.
With a thin sheet in a 60-degree room, and the fluorescent lights 10 feet over your head stay on all night.
Oh, they don't turn them off?
No.
Oh, my God. Is so is a lot of that stuff for A, I'm assuming for observation purposes, or B, I'm assuming they don't want to give you too much in the event that...
It's mostly observation.
That you act.
Some places will shine a flashlight at you.
Oh,
they
God.
just kept the lights on.
All right. It's hard to sleep.
To, like, a traditional, what feels like a hospital room, just not without the super fancy bed, just a plain old bed.
Sure.
State-run facilities are worse. I have not been in a state-run facility. My cousin has been in a state-run facility for 9 weeks one time, and he said, like, the toilet is, like, and the sink are, like, concrete, like, fixtures in the room. Like, it's a big... Like, they can come in with a pressure washer and clean the whole room. It's, like, that type of setup.
Jeez.
With, like, a little, like, crack in the wall with, like, some light coming in.
So, basically, for the most part, you're saying it's almost like just a stripped-down hospital room.
State-run facilities is what I would think jail to be like.
Yeah.
Like, Strong is kind of like a 50-year-old outdated crappy hospital.
Yeah. You mentioned your cousin spent some time doing that too. Is that something where this is like a hereditary type thing, or is it just a coincidence that it happens to?
It can be a little bit of both, I think. My grandmother had it, and unfortunately, my grandmother ended up taking her own life because of it, which is really hard.
Sorry, that's sad.
Really, I didn't know her, but knowing that about her is hard, and it's just interesting because, like, my cousin and I lost touch, and my cousin is not really actually, like, blood relative. He was married through his mom married my uncle.
Got it.
And I was kind of always wondering why he cared so much about family, and it was because my grandmother was the first person to really show him that you're part, like, you have a family.
Sure.
So it was nice to, because my family doesn't really talk about her that much because of how
things happened.
Yeah, how things happen.
Yeah.
So you just don't. So now it's like the person just doesn't exist, and he's
that's hard too.
Yeah, but he shed light on like all the. He's like, oh, she was like a Hallmark grandmother. Which just kind of like brings this. You think of like Christmas time, and there's Hallmark movie, and there's this gentle, loving, and it's like that instantly transformed my brain. Of like now, when I think of her, I don't think of like this bad thing. I think of this wonderful person that died of something rather than like did this. You know what I mean?
I almost feel like that statement alone completely encompasses your ability to think and moving in the right direction. It sounds like you're doing a lot for yourself, man.
Well, I mean, I started reading books, every book that I could get my hands on. And then I found a therapist that's really hard on me. Like when it's time for therapy, I'm almost like angry.
Yeah?
Because I know she's going to irritate me. Because I know if I told her I did the same thing that I said I wasn't going to do last week, she's going to play a violin.
Really?
Because she's gonna say like how many times have like I had like a stoner phase, and whenever I would smoke weed I would end up manic, and she's like, how many times are we gonna like do this?
How many times are you gonna do that?
How many times are we gonna like that doesn't serve you? How many times are you gonna do that? And I knew if I like cried because of something it was causing negative, it's like she's not like don't do it anymore. And the theme of the sessions we've had over the last 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, is captain of your own ship.
Okay.
Like, I was that picture perfect person that thought that life was happening to me. Like, all these bad things happened to me.
Sure.
And I felt like everything that was going on in my life was happening to me, and that I had zero control or zero power to cause any change in my own life.
Yeah.
And through 3 years of working with her, I've learned that you have a lot more power than you think, and people that struggle with these things probably have a lot more power than the average person. They just don't know it.
That's interesting.
And the more you want to go down the path of life is happening to me, chances are things aren't going to get any better. Granted, I always tread lightly because it's hard because if you take on, like, I can do this, I have power, I can make changes, you're much more likely to have an experience change. But I say that lightly because I've been in the psych ward with people in their late 80s, early 90s, and for them, things maybe never really did turn around.
Right.
So I humbly, lightly say, if you take control and really try to own what's going on in your life, there's a much greater chance than if, I'm this way because this person did this to me. I'm this way because 15 years ago, versus someone that says, well, this happened to me, but I'm choosing to do this now. Like, I can control the rudder on the ship.
Yeah.
I can choose. Life is a series of a bunch of small decisions that create habits and whatnot. I mean, like, you ask someone, like, what's the concept of a good story? Well, there's got to be a conflict. There's got to be a problem. And it's like what defines a character. It's like how someone in a story reacts to these pressures.
Yeah.
You have a lot of say in how you live your day-to-day life that creates, that's your story. How do you react to these things that happen to you? Do you want to be a victim? Society loves victims,
Sure.
I feel like. So, it's right now.
It's a good story.
It's a good story. It makes a good story. you can get all the sympathy in the world. You can go on Facebook, post a sad thing, and you have 20 people there to pick you up. And it's, it's when you're down, it's hard, but at the same time, it's like you can keep going down that path, but you're going to probably find the same desperation and exhaustion and fatigue. But it takes a lot of work to do the opposite, and I think that's where a lot of people either don't have the strength. Some people just don't. I think that unfortunately, and I'm not calling people weak, but just because I've been able to pull myself out, there are some people that unfortunately do take their life, and it's because they don't have it deep down, and life just got so hard, and it's why is it that some people can climb mountains and other people just can't do it?
Right.
At the end of the day, it's the same type of thing,
one of the questions I was gonna ask you was, if there's one piece of advice you can give anybody kind of going through something similar to you, it sounds almost like that is take control. It's be the captain of your own ship. Is that something that may not work for everybody, but would that be
personal
something
responsibility?
Okay.
No one else can do the hard work for you.
Yeah.
There, and if you're lonely and you're looking for someone else to do that for you, that's no different than shooting up heroin.
Yeah.
Because I think loneliness is a big issue in our society. And if only I had this, if I only had $1 million, if I only had the hottest girlfriend or a rich boyfriend or 10 dogs, I don't know, then I'd be this.
Superficially happy, essentially.
It's the big thing is that you're relying on someone else to do something within you, and you're the only person that can read books on how to do better. You're the only person that can go to therapy. You're the only person that can, unless someone sticks an IV in you, you're the only person that can take the medicine.
Right. What's somebody gave me a piece of advice recently about this whole weight loss thing I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
Is having the ability to forgive yourself when you mess up. Is that something you kind of work through as well?
I struggle.
Yeah?
I have this idea in my head that if I do everything that I'm supposed to do, I take my medicine, I exercise, I eat right, I should never have a mood swing. And when I do, I feel like I failed. So I have to be nice. And I try to tell myself, my therapist will tell me, you would never say the things that you say to yourself to someone else.
Right.
If you witness someone else fall in a way that you experience, she's you'd probably be the first person there to pick them up. But when it's you, it's kick them while they're down. So yeah, I struggle with that.
What's your support system like?
I have a really amazing girlfriend. I have 2 dogs, which is a little crazy right now. A little crazy.
Watching the phone just in case something happens.
Yeah, I basically have my phone on my lap. I have 3 messages from Hannah right now, and I'm really worried that one of them is the dogs have destroyed the place. But I told her to call me if it's an emergency.
So there was no call, so we're okay
no
for
call,
right now.
So we're okay.
Maybe it's just updates. We're good.
My mom is definitely there for me. I have my therapist is an amazing therapist, and my doctor has been there for me through thick and thin. And I work for a very good company that's very understanding. And then I have a pretty large circle of friends. I have a lot of people in my corner, and I'm lucky to have that.
Do you feel like you have to want that to make that happen, though? Because you talk a lot about people that you've encountered, throughout the process here. And some of them, I'm assuming, talk about those 80-year-old people in the psych ward where it sounds like they're almost kind of alone at that point.
It's easy to isolate when you don't feel alone. Also,
That's
the
what I was
thing
gonna
is,
ask,
a lot of times when you start displaying mental illness symptoms that aren't romanticized by society, you'd be amazed at the people that you thought were there for you that will just walk right out the door.
That's interesting.
I mean, I've had people close to me say, dude, you're just too hard of a person to be a friend with when you're going through it. And you thought that they would be the most loyal. It's because unfortunately, not everyone's capable of dealing with some of the mood swings or when someone's really depressed. But I think the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of people think that you're always looking for someone to fix your problem. But the thing is, there's 1 million people out there that are going to tell you how to lose weight. There's 1 million people that are going to tell you Like, there's the exercise for, like, mental illness. Just run every day, and you'll feel better. There's the just eat, be a vegetarian, and you'll feel better. Meditate.
Everybody's got the easy answer.
There's a million people willing to sell you on the magic answer.
Sure.
But how many people are there to just listen to you when things aren't going? Like, just listen.
Yeah.
Like, how many people are really willing to just listen?
It's basically somebody to be able to listen to your problems or listen to what you want to talk about without necessarily coming back with, well, you know what I think you should do, Jake?
Yeah, and there's also someone, but you also need someone that's not going to enable you to, like, keep going down, like, a destructive. Like, it's kind of like when you're depressed, it's like, when I'm in a depressed episode, it's like grief. Like, I can't do anything to, like, make it go away instantly.
Yeah.
But I can certainly not make it worse.
I definitely understand that problem completely. Like, I have bouts where there's days where I just don't, there's nothing triggering it other than it's just I don't know why I feel the way
fickle.
I do, but I need to get through it, and I need to work through it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to understand how that feels, and no, I that part of it I completely understand. It's like, but it is, to your point, it's easy just to be like, you know what, I'm just going to go lay in bed for, all day and be done with it, versus trying to talk about it and get it out. Like, my wife has been great with me with, it just give me that positive affirmation. Like, I'll text her at work, like, my head's not in it. I'm not here. Like, I'm having problems. Like, look, you're fine. Like, you've got a great life. You've got a great job. You've got great kids. Like, it'll be okay. And we're all here for you. And just that positive affirmation is kind of one of those things where it doesn't maybe make it go away, but it also isn't pushing it further.
Yeah, and it's like one of the things is, like, life is kind of like riding a bike. Like, you get on the bike, and the longer you stay on the bike, the easier it is to stay on it. And when you're really depressed and you hop off the bike, that bike starts to look scary. Getting out of bed looks scary. Going to work looks scary. Seeing a loved one looks scary. And the thing is, if you let these illnesses do that to you, that room that you're living in just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then things get scarier and scarier, and the mountain gets bigger. And what, was going to take a week to overcome is now going to take months or years to overcome. So, as you're saying, I think for you, like, talking to your wife is like putting one foot back on the pedal. Like, finishing your workday is pushing the other pedal.
Also affirming that it's okay to feel that way. I think that's one thing I struggle with is again, I'm not trying to, like, bond over this mental illness, but it's more of just explaining how I feel about it is making it okay. Like, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay. You're going to get through it. It's okay to feel that. It's okay to be in that moment. Like, I have moments of sadness where every once in a while, like, my mom passed away 5 years ago of cancer. She was, 56 years old. And there's days where just for no reason, like, it's all I can think about and be upset about it. And my wife would be like, it's okay. It's okay to be upset about it. Feel that emotion. It's okay to feel that emotion. Because I tend to feel bad about it or feel guilty about it.
Well, what you're really describing is that you're coming to another level of emotional maturity, because we live in a society where you can get a glass of wine while you grocery shop, while your kids are at the zoo.
It's pretty great, by the way.
You can, it's pretty great. I mean, these days you can go get, I was looking at the news, you're going to get, like, marijuana-infused dinners, like, there's just so many ways in our, like, the biggest issue is that we have a society, and I don't mean to bash society constantly, but there's a reason why we have such widespread mental illness in our society, is because we have these things that we do as a whole that don't serve us well. And what you're describing is the ability to sit with a feeling, which takes a certain level of braveness. So what you're doing is actually, in my opinion, really brave, because the easy thing to do is drink it away, smoke it away. I had a friend at work. He's like, dude, just run. And I'm like, dude, I know you have problems going on too. And you're literally running from them.
Literally running from the problem.
You're literally running. Like, that is your drug. Like,
yeah.
And for some people, it's how they eat. Like, they're like some things that are healthy. If that's what's helping you avoid sitting and going through what you need to go through, it's like going through an old, ugly closet that you have to clean out. Like, sometimes sitting in there is an uncomfortable thing. Like, there's rooms and chapters of our lives that we don't want to, like, go to. But until we can sit through those things, which takes a level of braveness, they're not going to get better. Like, to me, it shows a lot, like, while you're describing it, to me, it sounds like you're growing in some ways that maybe before you weren't in that aspect. So to me, like, that's a sign of someone, to me, that's, like, working through things rather than just avoiding them.
I know for me, a lot of it has to do with my kids. where the self-realization that there's more important things than what's going on in your freaking brain right now. Like, you're making something up that's causing you to feel this way, but there's other things in this world that you need to be present for. And I think you mentioned this earlier about just kind of being present in the moment and trying not to think ahead or think behind or being more present. It's so hard, especially the technology that we have now. It's, not being buried in your phone, trying to be a little bit more present. Like, I'm always constantly in a conflict of myself. It's like, well, should I be taking pictures of this event that we're doing with the kids, or should I just be here and have that mental image?
Yeah.
But what exactly do you feel from a society standpoint would be something, if you could change today, what would it be to try to help people with mental illness? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but like, what is something where society could change?
I think we were just hitting it on the head, living in the moment. Like, happiness to most people is that big vacation. It's the Christmas bonus. It's the engagement. It's the Facebook post that's going to get 200 likes when you normally get 20.
Yeah.
Real happiness, real content. I think contentment's a better word, contentment, because there's been times where I've been content in my life and things weren't going well and I wasn't exactly happy, but I was content.
I felt that way with our former employer.
Yeah.
Like, I was there for 8.5 years. I wasn't happy at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was content.
Mm-hmm.
And some people kind of live in that zone.
True happiness, life, as I said, is a series of small events that lead to create this bigger picture. Like, to me, happiness is when my girlfriend walks in the door and she sees me and her face lights up. Like, think of like when your dog sees you. Like, you do that every single day. And sometimes people come in and, they leave, they come back. Yeah, that can happen 2 to 3 times in a day. Sitting at dinner, that happens every single day. Nothing super exciting.
Right.
But those moments are 99% of your life. And if you can find happiness and contentment in 99% of your life and stop focusing on the 1% that rarely happens, I think, if you wanna find like some sort of happiness, if you're really struggling, start finding joy in the little things, because there's a lot more little things and very few big things.
What do you do for you?
Photography.
That's your thing, right?
That is my thing.
It makes you happy. Obviously, it gets the creative juices out. Does that kind of, is that something you kind of look forward to and kind of keeps you in that focus and moving forward?
Well, yeah, it's like we all have a cup, and like we got to fill it. And for me, to have a full cup, it's, before we did this, I went out downtown. It's stressful because I got the dogs. Hannah's trying to adjust to the dogs. I'm trying to adjust to the dogs. We just moved into this new house, and I'm like, okay, well, there's going to be, a couple hours where she's out doing her thing with her friends. The dogs can both go in the crate, which is fine, because I'm going to take them out later. And I get to just walk around downtown, see people, and just shoot a roll of film. And I've been looking to that all week, and then doing things like this. Like, this is a creative endeavor. Like, tomorrow I'm doing band promos for one of my friends' bands,
That's
one
cool.
of my best friends.
Yeah.
When I'm doing something artistic, or when I'm doing those things that fill my cup, I feel like my illness doesn't exist anymore. Like, in those moments, I don't feel the illness. In those moments, I feel like the most alive. Like, when I hear that shutter sound click on the film camera, or when I develop the film, or like even with digital, when I upload it to the computer and I see the finished product.
Yeah.
It's just like, in those moments, I'm not thinking about everything that I need. Like, it's just, this is what I'm doing right now. And it's a great feeling. But like, I get that way walking the dog, going for a walk with the more avenues you can find to do that, or like, just say, hey, like, my morning breakfast with my significant other is going to be that for me. Like, you can take the boring and mundane and make it what fills your cup. Like, that's a choice.
Man, you've given so much to think about, even for myself. Just this small conversation, just things I can do, and really focusing again, being on the present, doing things that kind of make you happy. And it really sounds like I said, man, it sounds like you're happy. I mean, obviously, this is something you're going to live with probably your entire life. But it sounds like you found a way to manage it, or at least, I don't want to say manage it, but just live a happy life and try to make the best out of every situation.
It doesn't, what's funny is, I think it's like this weird thing where like, I kind of like, my mom's still alive. So when you're talking about your mom, like to bring this together, like one of my friends who was 24 years old passed away in a car accident last year, and I was a claims adjuster last year managing car accidents all day. And what was a weird thing is that I began to be nervous when I would drive because I'm like, what happens if this person swerves into the other lane? And then it hit me that for so long, I wasn't afraid if I died because I was so miserable.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, I'm like, what if I die? Like, all of this goes, like, you see, like, what a turnaround that is?
Yeah.
Like, going from wanting to die to being afraid of dying
It's
because
such
you
a
have so much to
complete
lose.
180. And
Like,
it's,
that summarizes for me how big of a dramatic change it's been over the course of 5 years. Like, I
can
like,
see it in your face. You're smiling thinking about that because that seems like you said, it's a complete 180. It's a complete adjustment from what you did in the past.
I mean, going from feeling like you have nothing to lose, feeling like you have the entire world in your hands at any given moment is like a huge 180. Yeah,
it's powerful, mind blowing, but it seems like it's keeping you straight.
Yeah, exactly. And I try really hard to, like, sometimes I'm quiet. Like, I could post a lot more, like, positive, like, do this and you'll feel better, like, all that kind of stuff. But I just try to be, like, humble because, as I said, like, there was like Wednesday, like, dude, I was, like, in tears half the day. Like, I have my rough days, so I don't want to present this fake image on social media that I just have all my stuff together all the time. But at the same time, it's like I do want to, like, it's weird. I don't see myself as a role model, but at the same time, I do know that there are people that could look up to me in a way to say, hey, like, if things can turn around for him, like, I was in a psych ward where they take your clothes away when you get there. Like, you have to earn your, like, dude, at that moment, I had literally nothing. And at that moment, it was like my one boss, he's like, dude, if you don't have your mental health, you have nothing.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's just like, wow, like, it's a lot.
You mentioned you don't think you could be someone to possibly people look up to. I absolutely think you could. And that was one of the reasons why, I wanted to talk to you on this show is because your story and just watching your redemption from afar it fascinated the hell out of me. Just watching, knowing, I was there when you really started falling in that deep hole, and to see where you were then to where you are now in the support group that you have with your girlfriend, your family, I'm assuming there's some sort of support community for people with suffering. Is there?
There is, yeah. I mean, and then, but the one thing I also want to stress is that, like, that didn't happen quickly.
No.
I want to, like, make sure if someone's listening to this, they don't go, like, dude, that was probably, like, 6 years of hard work. And it took about 4 for it to start. Like, there was probably a 2-year period where I had to live. I was living as if I was trying to, like, get the wheels in motion. So I was, like, doing things to try to get my brain to, like, function the way I wanted it to.
Yep.
And my brain wasn't always in sync. But I was living as if my brain is okay. And then eventually, like, the chain went on the track on, like, the bicycle. You put one thing on, you start spinning it, and the next one goes in, and the next one goes in. And the next thing you know, it's doing a full circle, and it's in gear. And then you got to oil it. You got to maintain it. And then next thing you know, that bike's flying down the road. Like, 6 years for that,
It sounds like you got to really want it, though, because I'm sure there are people that absolutely just, are just going to maybe succumb to the disorder, succumb to the feelings, and you got. It sounds like you always had the desire to want to be better.
Yeah, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be here right now.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people that didn't.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, there's, like, some people can climb Mount Everest. I mean, I don't have that ability. Maybe I could if I really set my mind to it.
I definitely don't.
I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, unfortunately, and that's why I try to tread lightly, because I know for some, just like the other day I was telling someone about the whole weather bipolar thing. Like, it kind of upset me, but, like, what happens if someone read that and they were on that verge of not wanting to be here and they don't have that strength and someone says something like that? Like, just because I could get through it doesn't mean someone else can. So I try to be a huge voice when I see people, like, talking about bipolar in a negative way. It's like, okay, like someone told me that's close to me, you shouldn't be that upset about it. And I'm like, I'm not upset for me. I'm upset for the people that I know that could be the thing that pushes them over the edge. Like, a lot of people thought that it's funny that my ups and downs are relatable to the weather we're experiencing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like such a harmless joke, but for someone, dude, that you don't know what could be the final straw for someone. And I have a voice, and in those instances, I'm going to use it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's way about society, and there's such a fine line, I feel. And, you know, we talked about this, about the PC culture and stuff like that, too, where it's, you know, such a fine line between being overly sensitive about that sort of thing. But there's also, I guess, on the flip side of that, too, is there's also an education that could probably happen, too.
Yeah, I mean, people need to know that it's not just being happy and sad. Like, what are the ups? I would say, what are the ups like and what are the downs? I wouldn't use the words happy. Like, what are the ups like and what are the downs like? And yeah, people, there has to be more education. I mean, so many doctors and therapists, it takes, there's like statistics on how long it takes to get diagnosed with bipolar. It's like years.
Wow.
And the thing is, like, if you put someone with bipolar disorder on certain antidepressant medications, you can make them manic. And some doctors won't even recognize that that's happening.
Wow.
You know, they'll just give them more.
Oof.
You know, so like,
is there any resources that maybe you could point people to?
You know, obviously, if you're in really dire straits, you got to call 911.
Sure.
I think it's called NAMI, N-A-M-I. There's like local branches. I know Rochester has one. There's a Facebook page, and they post all sorts of resources. There's generally always centers in cities where you can get, you know, like a free intake, and they'll find a therapist for you or a doctor. Psychiatrists are very, very hard to come by. That's one thing that is a huge problem in society, is like, if you need a new psychiatrist, like, good luck. You know, and I don't mean to discourage anyone, because there are, you know, for certain situations you can get into one quicker, but if you're like, you know, you have one already and you want like a better one, like, you could be on a waiting list for 1.5 years, and hopefully your insurance doesn't change or they don't switch who they take. And I mean, I almost lost my therapist this year because my company changed health insurance companies and they weren't going to like cover her. And it was a 6-month ordeal to get her on that insurance. And a lot of that was because she was willing to like jump through 50 hoops to get like approved. But yeah, there's a lot of barriers, but there are a lot of resources. And I mean, you can even call it's hard. Like, I would look up NAMI because they can, like, that organization can find places for you to get help. But my biggest advice is get professional help. Friends and family are not trained to deal with suicidal thoughts.
Right.
They don't know how to deal with that. And like, they shouldn't, like, they should be there for you, but at the same time, like, that's a lot of weight to put on someone. Trained professionals know how to deal with that. I'm very annoyed because there's a lot of like Instagram coaches now that are like offering mental health coaching, and it's like, would you get like a hobbyist plumber or a hobbyist electrician? But why are we now all of a sudden trusting hobbyist therapists and doctors?
Yeah, no, there's a reason why they got to go to school as long as they do.
Yeah, like licenses and liability insurance. So my big thing is get professional help, and you got to be willing to try it, you know. And here's the thing is, like, it's kind of a mean thing to say, but like, with doctors and lawyers or any profession, like 50% of the people are in the bottom half of their class. So like, at the end of the day, like, there's bad therapists, there's bad doctors. Like, it probably took me 6 therapists, not to discourage anyone, but I did eventually find a therapist. And it's funny is because it's not the one that I really like the most.
Yeah.
Not the person I go and hang out with, but they're the person that's helped me turn my life around.
It's the one that makes the most sense for you.
Yeah, it's what works for me. But you got to get professional help, and that is something only you can be willing to do. I mean, there are people that can help point you, like NAMI, and you know,
sure,
your friends and family can say, "Hey, there's this doctor."
You know, maybe think about doing
work
this,
EAP, like, you know, normally those departments are really helpful. There's a lot of resources, and yeah, like, I just stress professional help. Like no one else is qualified other than professionals to help you deal with, especially if you're dealing with real severe
Yeah.
stuff, like, dude, just for the sake of you and the people around you, like, you got to do that.
Agreed. Jake, this has been awesome, man. I think you have given me way more to think about and to talk about than I anticipated.
Yeah, it's a lot, man.
Which is a good
I
thing.
could probably do like a 5-part series on it. So it was interesting because I've been thinking throughout the week. It's like, dude, like for me to give you a full this and that, like it would take like hours. But it's been fun, man. I'm really appreciative of you giving me the chance to come and talk to you. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to get this out there and have other people, because I think a lot of what you talked about can help other people, and that was kind of my goal with this. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was not only to understand your story and learn more about it, but I think there's so much of what you've done in a positive way that can help other people. Just that might be going through exactly what you're going through, or maybe not even a fraction of what you're going through, but something you said or something you did to keep pushing forward. And I think that was inspiring to me to have you on this conversation, was seeing how much you push forward on it and how much better you've gotten.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, like how much better you've gotten, but it's you're truly happy. When you started talking about your girlfriend, your dogs, stuff like that, like you have this smile on your face, and I don't even know that you were doing it, but I could physically see that you're in the right space. And it's not going to be that way every day, like you pointed out, but you found a way and found a reason to be. And I think that's the impressive part.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, man. And yeah, I just want anybody to know if they're going through a hard time, like it can, I always say it can get better. And I think for most people it will. I really do. I think, for most people, if you put in the work, you take control of what's going on and really try your best, I think for most people, I think things will get better in some way.
You gotta want it.
You gotta want it.
That's the big thing I took away from all this, is you gotta be in the right space to want it to happen. It's not gonna be easy, but you gotta want it to happen.
Exactly.
That's what I got. Well, we talked a little bit, and we'll close this out. We talked a little bit about your photography and how that's kind of been your outlet to kind of bring some joy to your life. You've also turned it into a business. How do people get a hold of you, or how can they follow along with your photography? If they want to hire you, where do they find you?
I'm on Instagram, Mr. Jake Wright. I kind of take things on it. Like sometimes it's weird. Sometimes I like push the business side of things, and other times I contract a little bit.
Yeah.
Depending on how I'm feeling.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm on Instagram. That's my main jam. I don't even have a website because I just don't like.
I think your Instagram showcases quite a bit of what you can do, though. So
yeah.
I appreciate that. But all right, Jake. Well, again, thanks, man, for coming on. I think this was a great conversation. It actually went way longer than I anticipated, which was fantastic. Oops. No, it's great. It means the conversation was good, which is what we were looking for here. But I think, like I said, you inspire me to try to live more in the moment. I think you've done a lot of great things to get yourself in a great place, and I couldn't appreciate you coming on more.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Man, oh man, what a fascinating interview with Jake Wright. I can't thank Jake enough for coming on, being as open and honest about mental health as he is. Again, I think I mentioned this during the episode, as someone who struggles with mental health myself, and by all means, I don't want to compare myself to what he's going through, but it's really, really inspiring to talk to somebody that, is going through it, and will always probably go through it, but is so open and honest about it. Be sure to follow him on Instagram at Mr. Jake Wright. Does an amazing job with his photography. If you're in the local Rochester, New York area, hit him up. He does great work. I would definitely recommend anything that you can sign him up for. But again, what an amazing interview. I can't thank Jake enough for coming on here. Mental health is something that carries a really negative stigma sometimes, and to, interview somebody that is so open and so honest about it is just so extremely refreshing. And I think eye-opening for a lot of people, and I hope honestly and truly that, Jake's story inspires other people to kind of come forward with, what they're dealing with and seek the help that they need. So, again, thanks to my guest, Jake. Be sure, again, follow him on Instagram at Mr. Jake Wright. You can follow us at You Fascinate Me Pod on Instagram, You Fascinate Me with Jamie Engel on Facebook, and you can email me youfascinatemepod@gmail.com. Please, please, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Download each and every episode. That certainly helps. Leave a 5-star review anywhere you possibly can. And if you're interested in working with us and, advertising on the show, youfascinatemepod@gmail.com. But again, thank you, everybody, for your support. This has been a massive success. I can't wait for next week's episode and, give you a little teaser. How about Buffalo Sabres great Alex Tuck? Again, thank you, everybody, for listening, and I will see you again next week.